Hey guys, so welcome to the video for balancing combustion reactions part 2. Here I'm going to go through a couple different examples applying those rules that were introduced in video 1. So to start out, I just wrote out the 3 basic steps. These are the 3 steps that you'll always have to do. And then the other steps are just sometimes if, certain situations arise. So let's just see these 3 steps in action. Step number 1, balance your carbons and hydrogens. I see 2 carbons over here on the left, so I'm going to put a 2 to get those carbons even on the right. Then I see my hydrogens. I have 4, so I'll put a 2 here because 2 times 2 is 4. So step number 1 is 10. Next, count the O's on the product side. So I'm going to count up my oxygens. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 1 is 2. And 4 plus 2 is 6. Oops. And that's done. And then finally, step 3, divide that number, that total, by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and that is the coefficient that goes in front of oxygen. And then you should be done. Of course, you should always check your work. So I'll go back and check 2 carbons, 4 hydrogens, 6 oxygens, and 2 times 2 is 4, plus 2 is 6 oxygens. And it worked, and it should work every single time. Except, of course, you have any of those exceptions that we talked about in video 1. So here is an example where we do have an exception. We'll just go through the regular rules until we get to that point. So step number 1, balance your carbons and hydrogens. C is, oops, let me erase that, sorry. So C is 3. I'm going to put a 3 right there to get those carbons balanced out. And then I have 6 hydrogens, so I want a 3 right here because 3 times 2 is 6. So there's my carbons and hydrogens. Next, I want to total up my oxygens on the product side. So 3 times 2 is 6 plus 3 is 9. So 9 is my total. And that's done. And then step number 3, divide by 2. 9 divided by 2 is, anybody? 4.5. And that is my coefficient for oxygen. Now, hopefully you guys are saying, wait a second, coefficients have to be whole numbers. We can't have a decimal, 4.5, in there. So what we do at this point, this is kind of our step 3A. Step 3A says that if O's coefficient is a decimal, then double all coefficients. And so here in front of the, and we have to do all of them. So in front of the C3H6, that's an invisible 1. So 1 times 2 is 2. 4.5 times 2 is 9. And then 6 and 6. And of course, we should go back and double check that everything's balanced. So 2 times 3 is 6, 6 carbons. 2 times 6 is 12. What is that? Hydrogen. So 6 times 2 is 12. And then our oxygen, 6 times 2 is 12, plus 6 is 18, and 9 times 2 is 18. So we are balanced. So there's just an example where you have to double all of those coefficients. Next, we'll demonstrate the rule where you have to subtract the oxygens from the hydrocarbons. So we got 1, 2, 3. We're always going to do those steps. So step number 1, carbons is a 2. Hydrogens, remember to count this one. So 5 plus 1 is 6. So if there's 6 over there, then I need a 3 right here to equal 6. So there's my carbons and hydrogens. Step number 2, total up my oxygens. And 2 times 2 is 4, plus 3. 4 plus 3 is 7. I can do math. So 4 times 3 is 7. There's my total. And then here is where we have step 2A. So before you divide, let me move this over here, by 2, subtract the oxygens in the hydrocarbon. Oh, my phone's going off, sorry. From your total. From your step 2. Okay, so let's bring this back. Now to do this purple step, I see there's 1 oxygen right here. And so I'm going to do 7 minus 1 equals 6. And that's all you do. If there were 2 oxygens here, I would subtract 2, 7 minus 2, and that would be 5, and so on and so forth. So look at your hydrocarbon. If you see an oxygen, then you have to do this step 2A before you move on to 3. And then step 3, now that we've done 2A, is just divide it by 2 and put the coefficient out front. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and that is my coefficient right here. And that is done, and that should be balanced. So let's double check. 2 carbons, 2 carbons, 6 hydrogens, 6 hydrogens, and then 4, because 2 times 2 is 4, plus 3 is 7 oxygens. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7 oxygens. Sweet. Okay, last one. So this one, I forget, I think this is a duplicate example. I don't know. Let's find out. Give me the right color. So we have step 1, step 2, step 3. Step number 1, balance my carbons and hydrogens. So right here, carbon should be a 2. Oh, here it is. I have 5 hydrogens over here. I cannot multiply anything by 2 to get 5. So here is a scenario where it's kind of similar to when we had to double everything, not duplicate, double everything. There's no way to get those hydrogens balanced, so I have to double them to get that even number. 2 times 5 is 10, and 5 times 2 is 10. So now I have to fix my carbons. I did have a 2 there, but now I need to change that to a 4. So it's kind of similar. It's just that you're doing it right at step 1 instead of step 3A. So there's that. Check, and then count up my my oxygens. 4 times 2 is 8, and then plus 5. Oh geez, that is 13, I think. 8, 9, 10, 12. Yeah, 13. Great. Always double check. We should be using a calculator maybe. All right, and then 13 divided by 2 is my last, or is that supposed to be, yeah, it's supposed to be blue, right? I don't know. 13 divided by 2 is 6.5, I think. Yep, 6.5. So that would go here. But now here's one of our other extra steps that cannot happen. We don't do decimals. So while I did that, I do have to do step 3A, which is double everything. So here are number 2 becomes a 4, 6.5 becomes a 13, and 8 and 10. Sorry, I keep having a frog in my throat. And there you have it, and it should be balanced. You can go ahead and double check that if you wish, but I hope it's balanced. Maybe I should check it. Okay, 4 times 2 is 8. 8, 20 oxygens. 5 times 4 is, or hydrogens I meant, 20 hydrogens. 20 hydrogens. And then 13 times 2 is 26 oxygens. And that's 16 plus 10 is 26. Perfect. So it is balanced. See, told you. So there you have a review of those combustion tricks that I like to use. If you can remember them, great. If not, that's okay too. You don't have to do it this way. It's just a trick that I like to use. And if you can remember those tricks, then it makes your life a little bit easier. Thanks.